On November 9th, 1989, thousands of East Berliners crossed the Berlin Wall into the west. This would mark the beginning of a reunited Germany and the fall of communism in Eastern Europe. The Berlin Wall had separated East and West Berlin for around 30 years at the time, and stood as a symbolic and physical barrier between the two parts of the city. Though it was still possible to cross the wall, it made the ideological divide between the two parts of the city very clear. For most of the time after the wall was constructed, it was heavily guarded with many watchtowers and various traps and roadblocks. Overall, this made East Berlin much like a prison for many years, but around 5,000 were still able to defect to Western Berlin. But by the time it was 1989, the world had changed a lot. Communism as a whole was beginning to crumble, with Russia's economy and influence starting to decline. And multiple protests in East Germany and other Eastern Bloc countries prompted the East German government to be much less aggressive to anyone crossing or destroying the wall. Very few documents were checked and barely any police action was taken to stop this. Eventually the gates were left open and anyone wanting to cross either way could without any trouble. Now, this started with protests mainly, but what really triggered the mass crossings was a press conference where the party boss of East Berlin, Gunter Schwabowski, was set to announce that the border would be open for travel the next day, but he was only given this information right before the conference and he wasn't instructed on what to do with it. This led to him saying that the borders would be open immediately. Quickly, the news of this made its way all around the city and thousands lined up at checkpoints in the wall to travel to West Berlin. Police did their best to control the crossings, but they hadn't been informed that the border would be opened yet, so they didn't really have an idea of what was happening. At the time of these protests, the Prime Minister of Britain, Margaret Thatcher, met with the Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev to see what he could do to prevent the collapse of the wall. Both the French and British Prime Ministers of the time agreed that a reunified Germany would be a real threat to the security of Europe and openly opposed it. The idea that if Germany were to reunite it would try to take revenge on the countries that occupied it for so many years seemed to be a real possibility at the time. Unfortunately for them, nobody in the East German government would be willing to take responsibility for instructing police to use lethal force to prevent border crossings. In December of 1989, at a summit in Strasbourg, France, Margaret Thatcher warned European leaders of the threat, but at that point it was becoming clear that a reunified Germany would be inevitable. The condition and effectiveness of the wall continued to deteriorate for the following months until the official demolition of it began on June 13, 1990. Just a few short months later, on October 3rd, Germany would be completely united again, with Berlin serving as the capital. This was made possible by the 2+4 Treaty, which had the previous occupying countries of Germany let go of it, giving the country full sovereignty. It took about 4 more years before the wall was completely taken down, and during this time much work was done to reintegrate all parts of the country. This started with the German Chancellor, Helmut Kohl, creating a 10-point program for the two merging countries to follow 2 weeks after the Berlin Wall fell. Then, in March of 1990, East Germany had its first free elections, in which the Socialist Party in East Germany lost. Next, the East German economy almost completely fell apart, prompting a treaty to be made on May 18, 1990, for the emergency merge of the East and West economies. With both countries using the same currency, many West German policies and laws were adopted by East Germany as well. In July of 1990, both governments began work on creating a treaty for the reunification of the country, and in August it was signed off, effectively having West Germany absorb East Germany. In the following years, international opposition of a unified Germany declined significantly, as it was found that the country did not become a large threat to Europe. Nothing drastic ever happened, and the transition to a single country went pretty smoothly. But today the fall of the wall is still a very much remembered day in Germany, and there are memorials on its anniversary.